I'm John Kaiser here in Vancouver, September 7th, 2019, with Rick Mazur, CEO and President of Forum Energy Metals. Rick, welcome to Vancouver.
Yeah, okay, well, this is home.
In your presentation, Janice Lake was the obvious flagship project. Rio Tinto has done a deal which allows it to earn up to 80%. It is a copper sediment hosted type of system. It's lower grade than the much higher grade ones that we find in Zambia and the Congo. What has attracted Rio Tinto, which looks for very large, rich deposits to flesh out its production lineup, what has attracted them to this part of northern Saskatchewan, and in particular the Janice Lake project?
Yeah, well, number one, I think Rio Tinto is beginning to focus on sedimentary copper-hosted project because they are, like in the Central African Copper Belt, they can be very large and very high grade. So the Janice Lake project in Saskatchewan was certainly overlooked. I mean, we recognize that as a company. That's why we acquired it and drilled it ourselves. I think one of the big things that they see, that Rio Tinto sees, is that if you reconstruct the paleo continents back in the Proterozoic era, the very large Uticon sedimentary deposit, which is 54 billion pounds of copper and 200 million ounces of silver, was at one time within the same sedimentary rift system as Janice Lake, if you put the continents all together. And continents have spread apart, and Janice Lake is in Saskatchewan, was drilled by Noranda and Phelps Dodge in the late 90s and early 2000s, and only 35 drill holes, but each drill hole got some significant thicknesses and grades of copper mineralization.
So the Uticon deposit is this laterally extensive, flat-lying deposit with the bad luck of having a mountain sitting on top of it, a mountain that the Soviets apparently even considered removing with a nuclear bomb before common sense prevailed. In the case of Janice Lake, we do not, if there were a big flat-lying deposit like that, it would have been found by Noranda and the others. What is the difference between the way this sediment-hosted system is configured in this part of Saskatchewan that also allows you to have optimism that you can put together large zones that can be mined?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was discovered by prospectors in the 60s and drilled by Noranda, 35 drill holes in the 90s. There was a 6-kilometer area of copper mineralization that was discovered, and everyone kept going back to the same 6-kilometer area. So Noranda drilled it in the 90s, and then Phelps Dodge kind of took all of Noranda's data at that time, reprocessed it, really thought about it, and drilled only 6 holes in 2004 in one particular area. And the methodology worked. They were targeting magnetics, magnetic highs, which they recognized were the magnetic high sediment. The magnetic sediments also hosted the copper. So they drilled 6 holes, were very, very successful. So what we've been able to find out from our 4 drill holes and going back in there and looking at the project from our standpoint is, and this is something the Phelps Dodge had not really figured out because they never finished or never had a follow-up drill program because they were taken over by Freeport-McMoRan. What we came up with, and from our short drill program, was we were able to figure out a little bit of the architecture or the structural controls of the mineralization. And we could determine, we're the first guys to put 3 holes into that area and figure out how it was dipping. So we were able to determine that, hey, this thing has open pit potential. What Rio Tinto's finding out from their compilation work, and it's been very sophisticated stuff that they've done. We're very impressed to have a partner like them. What we've got, because of the structural regime in that part of northern Saskatchewan, there's been a lot of folding. So it's maybe kind of like this, and been crinkled that way too by a second structural event. And that's what Rio Tinto is doing with this program this year. They want to figure out the architecture of the basin, what's controlling the mineralization stratigraphically, the structures, what's the structural controls of mineralization, and just how, obviously, how thick these zones are and what the grades are.
So when you did the deal with Rio Tinto, they asked you to expand the strike of the project so that it is now 52 kilometers, spending $3 million right away in the first year, even though they have 18 months to do so. That's fairly aggressive, yet it's focused on a relatively short segment of that whole 52 kilometer project. The geophysical survey that they did would have covered the whole property. What are they looking for in the drilling, the focus drilling that they're doing now, hoping to see and be able to map to the geophysics, the magnetics for the entire property?
Yeah. Well, when we bought the property, basically the claim was covering the original showing area, maybe 6 kilometers. We recognized from mapping by the Saskatchewan Geological Survey that there was 25 kilometers to the north that needed to be staked. So we staked that. And then when we were negotiating the deal with Rio Tinto, at the 11th hour, they came to us, and it was, I think, very, very reasonable, and being a good partner. They said, guys, we've compiled all the geophysics that has ever been done in that part of the world, and this basin goes for another 25 kilometers to the south. So they said, you guys go out and stake it tomorrow, and it will roll it into part of the deal. So I thought that was really great of Rio Tinto to do that. And so we've got 52 kilometers of we got the whole basin now. So essentially, because there's a correlation with magnetic sediments and copper mineralization, they've did a high resolution mag survey at 100-meter line spacings over the full 50 kilometers. I mean, a junior couldn't do that. The survey was well over, close to $300,000. And what we're trying to do, obviously, because of that correlation with mag highs and copper mineralization, just trying to find out other areas along the whole basin that show similar prospectivity, similar zones of potential copper mineralization. So it's a big project. They're taking a big viewpoint to the exploration of this sedimentary copper basin.
Now, I know you can't speak for Rio Tinto, but with the work they're doing now, it seems more like they're setting the stage up for more work. But technically, if they spent the $3 million this year, they don't need to spend any more money until 2021. Any guess on whether they're going to move aggressively next year?
Yeah, I can't speak for Rio Tinto at this stage in the game, but the $3 million budget will be spent at the end of September here this year. So their commitment will be made. As of last week, there were 17 drill holes in it. There's 7,000 and 4,000 meters drilled. There's 7,000 meters planned. We'll see if they're on budget type of thing. But you know, I would be shocked if they, given the extent of the ground that needs to be properly explored to see the true potential of this basin, I would be shocked if they didn't come back for a second shot, and at least that. And I think they would keep that going right away. I sincerely hope that we're looking at a follow-up program in 2020.
Now, you staked the Love Lake project. It's not that far from the Janice Lake project to cover a portion of the Peter Lake domain, which you mentioned is the largest mafic, ultra-mafic complex in North America. Various groups have explored it since the 60s. The last crack was by a junior. Even in the past decade, they spent maybe $10 million on parts of it. What approach is your team taking that gives you optimism that you'll find a nickel, copper, platinum group metals system where the others only found little snippets here and there?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Well, you know what? We are, well, first of all, we're putting what I think is an excellent team of geologists that understand how these systems work. We've engaged Larry Hulbert, who is a renowned international expert in magmatic nickel copper deposits and in particular nickel copper platinum palladium environments. So he's quarterbacking the whole thing. We've had the luxury of a number of geophysical surveys that were flown by a junior back in 2009, 10, 11 era there, and so there's a lot of good data that Larry's gone through, and with a view with his background and knowledge in these systems, what to look for in that produces these kinds of deposits, and I have Jim Atkinson working for us in the field. Jim's he worked up at Peter Lake back for Lacana in the 80s, and he went back for International Platinum in the 90s, late 90s, when there was that run on platinum. And he also was the director of exploration when Noron made the discoveries in the Ring of Fire. So he's a top-notch nickel copper guy. So he was up in the field just the last week. We're taking a bunch of samples because I think the approach for these platinum palladium systems is we got to marry some good geochemistry with the geophysics, and that's what's going to make for a discovery. And because it's a glaciated terrain, there's a paucity of outcrop. And hey, when most of these deposits, let's look at Voisey's Bay, for instance. Inco wrote it off years ago because there's no way that there's going to be any big nickel copper deposits in a northocite. And then a bunch of other juniors kind of looked at it, and everyone wrote it off. And then look what happened when Friedland's company came in there, there's just more data. As you add more layers of data, that's how exploration works, and that's how discoveries are made.
One last question. The company has a portfolio of uranium prospects in the Athabasca Basin, on which Forum and partners spent over $40 million from 2005 to 2013. The market's giving no value to that, which is understandable given where uranium is right now. But say uranium went back over $50 a pound, where in that portfolio would you go back to and build on the work already done?
Yeah, well, there's 7 drill-ready projects there. I like them all. Where would I go back? Certainly our Maurice Bay, Northwest Athabasca joint venture. There is a deposit there. We have 1.5 million pounds of uranium on that joint venture with NextGen, Cameco, and Areva, or Orano, as they're called now. That's one of our key projects. We have good ground just on trend from the Fission Triple R deposit and NextGen deposits at Patterson Lake. And our Fur Island project up around Stony Rapids is a very good, has great potential. But you know what? We see it as an optionality play for us. We'd be very interested in finding partners to advance those drill-ready projects.
Thank you, Rick. I've been talking with Rick Mazur of Forum Energy Metals in Vancouver at the Metals Investor Forum conference.